Deputy Speaker.
Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interests of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodigheid of wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele ilizwe letu nabantu balo, umaseli ukulunga kipondo letu. Nkosi sikelele I Afrika, tina abantuano bayo, kokela inkokeli zayo, inike ikolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. A very good morning to everybody in the chambers this morning and those that are attending on a hybrid virtual session. To all our guests, our press, a very good morning. I'd like to remind members about some of the logistical arrangements. If a member of this provincial parliament elects to participate virtually and not from the chamber, it is the member's responsibility to ensure that he or she has good quality data connectivity for good quality audio and that there are no disturbances. The hybrid system has been functioning well up to now, and we cannot attribute any sound problems to the system. Members who are considered to be out of order, please be reminded that your microphones will be muted and a call to order. Honourable members, for the purpose of the sitting, we have language translation services, and please for you to connect via your second device, such as your cell phone, and if you have earphones, to please use it within the House. Honourable members are also reminded that no interjections are permitted during these hybrid sittings. And in this regard, I draw to the attention of honourable members to Rule 40 of the Standing Rules. I now recognise the Deputy Chief Whip, or is it the Chief Whip? I'd just like to check whether the Chief Whip has connectivity.
Good morning, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I'm here.
I recognise you, Chief Whip.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I move the motion as printed on the order paper in my name.
Any objections, honourable members? No objections? Agreed to. Thank you, Chief Whip. The Secretary will now read the first order of the day.
Consideration of Principles of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Stamela. I now recognise the Honourable Minister David Mania.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
We, of course, have been hit hard by the pandemic. And although there are a number of significant downside risks, we do expect a gradual economic recovery in the Western Cape. We welcome the recent announcement by President Cyril Ramaphosa to relax restrictions, especially those restrictions that relate to the tourism and hospitality sector in the Western Cape. We regard relaxing restrictions as a step in the right direction that will support economic growth and job creation in our province. We are already, in fact, seeing the green shoots of economic recovery in our province, with traveller confidence returning, with more than 125,000 international passengers and more than 462,000 domestic passengers arriving just last month at Cape Town International Airport, which we believe is very good news, particularly for the tourism and hospitality sector, which of course was so hard hit by the pandemic in the Western Cape. We of course now need national government itself to push forward and to allow the national state of disaster to expire. Deputy Speaker, while we're on the subject of the economy, we should also recognize, and indeed I think welcome, the recent statement by President Cyril Ramaphosa that, and I quote, "Government doesn't create jobs, business creates jobs," which I think we would all agree, or perhaps we would not all agree, was both a moment and an admission that the development state has failed, and failed spectacularly in South Africa. We know that President Cyril Ramaphosa is at war with his party, and his admission that it is business, not governments, that creates jobs must have come as a terrible shock, not necessarily to the leader of the opposition, but to the smokestack economy supporting ministers that dominate national government in South Africa. Deputy Speaker, we, as honourable members know, tabled a budget to push forward last week in the provincial parliament here in the Western Cape. And we did so to sustain the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, to support our strategic priorities, most importantly, jobs, safety and well-being. We did so to protect frontline services, including education, health and social development, to improve the composition of expenditure by boosting spending on infrastructure, supporting vulnerable municipalities, and of course, to improve the efficiency of expenditure by improving value for money in procurement, to mitigate existing risks such as drought, fire and flooding, and of course also to mitigate new future risks, and finally to ensure the long-term sustainability of the Western Cape. To push forward, we will spend 19.6 billion rand over the medium term on jobs, 4.4 billion over the medium term on safety, 111.3 billion over the medium term on well-being, and 30.3 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure in the Western Cape. Because we, Deputy Speaker, have been prudent, and because we have taken the hard decisions over a number of years to balance our budgets, we of course are now in a position to allocate 10.1 billion rand more over the medium term in the Western Cape. And so to push forward, we will be spending an additional 6.2 billion rand on education over the medium term, an additional 2.4 billion rand over the medium term on healthcare, and an additional 136 million over the medium term on social development. And of course, we will be spending an additional 2.6 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure in the Western Cape. And we, of course, will spend that budget across 5 districts and 30 municipalities in our province, including spending 8.7 billion in the Cape Winelands district, 989 million in the Central Karoo district, and spending 54.2 billion in the city of Cape Town. And of course, finally, we hold 1.3 billion rand in the provincial reserves for unforeseen and unforeseeable expenditure to mitigate future risks such as flooding, fire, and drought in the Western Cape. To push forward, Deputy Speaker, we will have to respond to massive spending pressure, building up, not just in our province, but in all provinces across South Africa. However, there are significant downside risks to the economic outlook, including stagnant economic growth, with the national economy forecast to grow at about 1.8% over the medium term. Huge fiscal deficits of 386.6 billion rand in 2022-23, 323.6 billion rand in 2023-24, and 304.2 billion rand in 2024-25. We have staggering national debt of 4.5 trillion in 2022-23, 4.8 trillion in 2023-24, and 5.2 trillion rand in 2024-25. And of course, with that comes massive debt service costs of 301.8 billion rand in 2022-23, 334.9 billion rand in 2023-24, and 363.5 billion rand in 2024-25. But to be honest, the most worrying figure was a figure dropped into the budget speech by the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana himself, who revealed for the first time that a staggering 308 billion rand has been wasted on bailing out failing state-owned enterprises in South Africa. Think about it. We have wasted 308 billion rand on failing state-owned enterprises in South Africa. To put that number in perspective, 308 billion is 11 times more than the provincial education budget, 10 times more than the provincial health budget, and 134 times more than the provincial social development budget for the next financial year in the Western Cape. And so we are in deep economic trouble. And to make matters worse, the war in Ukraine will increase the downside risk and push up prices of petrol and wheat and fertilizer in South Africa. What all this means in the end, of course, is that provincial budgets are not likely to increase in real terms, and that spending pressures building up in education, in health and social development are going to put huge pressure on provinces across South Africa, which is precisely why we are investing in a project to better understand fiscal future trends so that we ensure the fiscal sustainability of the Western Cape. In the end, Deputy Speaker, we tabled a budget to push forward so that we give hope to people who do not have jobs, and so that we give hope to people who feel unsafe, so that we give hope to people who struggle to reach their full potential, and so that we give hope to people who perhaps do not have access to good schools and good clinics and good roads. And so that in the end, we can all get up, so that we can all get out, so that we can push forward, and so that we can do even better in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Mania. If I can just ask that the podium be brought to the opposition. Thank you. Before we move on. Before we start the clock. You want to use that podium? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's coming to you. All right. Thank you very much. I now recognize Honourable Doug Moore.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, honourable members. Budgets are about choices that governments make. They are informed in our context by what we want to achieve in the country, the province, or the municipality where we govern. They are not neutral. Budgets reflect our ideology and how we see the world. And this development state in South Africa has guided us to a minimum wage, has promoted particular growth sectors in our economy, and has in fact introduced the public works. I can assure you, Deputy Speaker, that the Honourable John Steenhuisen would come nowhere near President Ramaphosa having raised almost 1.2 trillion rand for investment. And that is why the people of South Africa have confidence. And that is why the President has strengthened the NPA, the SIU, the Hawks, to deal with those thieves that have attempted to destroy our state-owned enterprises. I want to argue today that this provincial budget reflects the right-wing liberal orthodoxy of the DA, which perpetuates the myth of an equal, open opportunity society. This ideology masks the reality in our country that race, class, and gender are indicators of poverty, inequality, and the ownership of capital assets. After centuries and decades of struggle by the majority of South Africans against colonialism and apartheid, we established a democratic state governed by the Constitution of the Republic. A central thread which runs through this founding document is that the democratic government needs to take steps to redress the inequalities of the past caused to persons who were subjected to unfair discrimination. Section 25(8) of the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, which deals with property, states that no provisions of this section may impede the state from taking legislative and other measures to achieve land, water, and related reform in order to redress the results of past racial discrimination. Chapter 10 of our very own Constitution, Deputy Speaker, in this province, which deals with the directives of provincial policy, states that the provincial government must adopt and implement policies to actively promote and maintain the welfare of the people, aimed at achieving the following: the promotion of non-racialism and the protection and advancement of persons or categories of persons disadvantaged by unfair discrimination. In this province, that is people who are classified as colored, as Indian, as African, and women. Deputy Speaker, it is clear to me that this DA provincial government is in breach of both the national and the provincial constitution. This constitution is not a right-wing liberal document. It is an injunction to establish a united, non-racial, democratic, non-sexist, and prosperous country. It obliges us to implement laws and policies and budgets which redress this unfair discrimination. What is shocking, Deputy Speaker, is that Premier Winde is in fact not even aware of the provisions of Chapter 10 of the Constitution of the very province that he leads. When he was asked to name but one policy that this government has introduced to advance those disadvantaged by unfair discrimination, he could not do so. Not one. He couldn't. We have a political party that leads this province that are race denialists. They willfully ignore that the vast majority of workers in our province who are colored and African do not own land or capital assets. It is of no concern to the DA that less than 2% of agricultural land in this province is owned by Black South Africans, colored, African, and Indian. It is of no concern to the DA that while white South Africans, who constitute 18% of the population in this province, own 70% of the urban land, while colored and African citizens, who constitute 48% and 32% of the population, own only 10% and 3% of urban land, respectively. This racism runs deep in the DA, and its leaders are unwilling to confront it. The DA Deputy Chief Whip in the city, who is white, recently said that an African DA councillor must go and fetch her food from the Eastern Cape. No action was taken against him. Mayor Hill Lewis simply says the matter has been settled. If one white member of this House said the same to a black DA member in this House, would we have just said, no, the matter is settled? Or would you have actually done something about it? We are thus not surprised at the steady stream of black DA leaders who have left or been pushed out by the DA. Here in our province, we have seen our coloured voters in 2021 deserted the DA and voted in their thousands for other parties. This budget is about choices. The DA chooses to cut social security by demanding that the minimum wage be reduced to an old age pension level, to propose spending cuts at national level on higher education, to cut spending on community policing fora, which will disable our communities at that level in fighting crime, and to cut and curtail spending on health, resulting in possible closure of clinics in Mitchell's Plain and a refusal to adequately fund the Khayelitsha Hospital or say anything about when GF Uster will be built. They cut allocations to municipalities, which then impose hefty penalties and rates on citizens for basic services. It wants to halt land distribution and undermine security of tenure, and it wants to reduce, and it has in fact reduced, funding to the Children's Commissioner over the medium term. Where the ANC governs, Deputy Speaker, we see practical steps to advance redress, where the Theowaterskloof municipality has granted a long-term lease of municipal land to coloured and African farmers. We need all of us to build a new consensus based on the provisions of our constitution. Redress and equity is a central theme. Practical solutions which confront the original sin of land dispossession directly while securing food security and the transformation of the agricultural sector. What is the ANC proposing in the Western Cape? We have initiated and will carry out a land audit throughout this province. As leader of the opposition and with our ANC MPLs, I will request meetings with every mayor and the relevant national ministers to establish the state of the land audit in every municipality. We want to know from every municipality what land is owned by the national, provincial and local government, which land is owned by state-owned enterprises, which land belongs to community trust. We also want to identify local, well-located private land. We do not support what the DA's coalition partner, the EFF, supports. They want to simply invade land. That is a recipe for chaos. The DA's refusal to accelerate land redistribution in this province is also a recipe for chaos. We want the redistribution of land to happen in terms of the Constitution and the law, but we cannot, Deputy Speaker, wait any longer. I want to appeal to Premier Winde in his absence to enter into a new consensus about the need for land redistribution in our province. Our President has called upon us to enter into new consensus. Premier Winde, will you support local social compacts in every municipality to identify and release public land starting this year, 2022? MEC Mainey, will you, through the Deputy Speaker, provide funding to those municipalities who do not have updated and accessible land audits? This land must be used for integrated social and low-cost housing, for agriculture, urban food security, human settlements, LED, arts, culture and recreation. These audits must be accessible and transparent. They must be included in the IDP of each municipality as well as a land release strategy. The dodgy land deals like in Swartland must stop. The bankies for booties of the National Party that have been carried over into the DA must stop. This budget clearly does not invest enough in tourism, a sector which is very well positioned to grow jobs and one which has the potential to advance black operators. Our province is blessed with natural beauty, with indigenous plants which are the envy of the world. We need to ensure sustainable development. This endowment that we have is threatened by climate change, water pollution, fires, and a sanitation crisis. The ANC demands that the Environmental Commissioner be established in this province to ensure that the public and private entities protect the environment. We need to see a sustainable development consciousness as a comparative advantage to the Western Cape, a citizenry who understand climate change and the need for sustainable development which empowers the community. This is what a dynamic environmental commissioner can bring. This office of the commissioner will be seen as a plus for the Western Cape and attract hundreds and thousands more domestic and foreign tourists. The ANC says the environmental commissioner now. Die ANC sê die omgewingskommissaris nou. Die ANC iti commissario wendalo esingondileyo wepondo ngok. Not izolo ngok. We all know that the establishment of a children's commissioner came as a result of the campaign by the ANC and civil society. Honourable Mackenzie tried to claim it as a victory of the DA. No one believed him. He's chup still about the lack of funding for the commissioner. Where have you been, Honourable Member Mackenzie? The ANC will insist that the adjustment budgets deals with the underfunding of the Children's Commissioner. In the light of the Fritz and Payne matters, the ANC will be demanding transversal GBV policy and ensuring that GBV is taken seriously in this provincial government. The elements of this policy must include consistency in procedures across all offices and departments, immediate suspension of people when they are in court facing any charges relating to GBV, action taken against those superiors or heads of departments which seek to cover up cases of GBV, even if they are women, like the head of Department of Transport and Public Works, who clearly has covered up and not even instituted provincial disciplinary processes against the acting HOD, at least of head of traffic. Support for the victims of GBV, including legal, psychological, and material assistance when and if needed, and full disclosure of reports with respect to victims when taxpayers' money is used to investigate these matters. Speaker, the ANC cannot support this budget because it does not address the inequality, especially in the Western Cape. And while, Deputy Speaker, we welcome the verbal commitment to actually establishing a provincial house for traditional and Khoisan leaders, once again, we fear what happened with the Provincial Children's Commission and is now happening with the environment. You talk about this, but you don't implement it. We are saying that before 2024, a Western Cape house of traditional leaders must be set up in the Western Cape. And the allocations that have been made are minimal. There's no strategic plan. And we insist, Deputy Speaker, that this must actually be done. So we have a situation where the Honorable Mania comes here and undermines the notion of a developmental state. Our president is leading this country on a growth path that will include, and that is why all of us, including members of that side, should support President Ramaphosa, because he is the person and the organization that he represents that can take South Africa forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I now recognize Honorable America.
Good morning and thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the last 2 years of living in the midst of a global pandemic have affected all of us. The continued national state of disaster also impacted negatively on a host of industries. The impact of the successive lockdowns on the public transportation system and its commuters cannot be underplayed. Nowhere has this been more devastating than on the state of our rail services in Cape Town. Due to vandalism, land invasions, and lack of security to protect our infrastructure, Cape Town's rail infrastructure was devastated by these wanton criminality. Many functioning services were negatively affected and others came to a screeching halt. Our rail services is in such a sorry state that when services were meant to resume, commitments previously made by PRASA cannot be fulfilled and our train commuters continue to be denied safe, affordable and reliable public transport. The Northern Line is only now coming back into operation after being closed since March 2020. And whilst the National Minister of Transport back in January promised that the Central Line would be fully functional by the end of July this year, this is not going to happen. Then PRASA promised that the line would be open by the end of December 2022. This too have now been moved to open by the end of December 23. These empty promises leave countless passengers with limited transportation options to wait so much longer. I'm therefore pleased that this budget has shown a commitment by the provincial government to not only improve, but also to strengthen public transport in the Western Cape through local partnerships and intergovernmental cooperation. The Provincial Department of Public Transport and Public Works has committed itself to working with PRASA and other stakeholders in the province in an effort to fix the rail system and to restore the Central Line. Reliable rail services play a critical role in any well-functioning public transport system. Honourable Deputy Speaker, of course, the only way we can truly fix the broken rail services in the Western Cape is for rail services to come under the custodianship of a capable metropolitan and provincial government. The most recent discoveries by PRASA regarding 3,000 ghost employees have come as no surprise and highlights how broken the entity truly is. This discovery highlights the deeply rooted corruption and mismanagement at PRASA. These ghost employees presumably went undetected for years, which means that PRASA has possibly lost millions of rands per year on salaries and benefits. These monies must be recouped and the perpetrators brought to book. Another critical component, Deputy Speaker, of our public transport system is our taxis. We have seen an increase in the number of taxis on the road with registered blue dot stickers. This initiative by the department has contributed massively towards improving driving in the taxi industry. The 70 million rand allocation for the upcoming financial year towards the extension of the Blue Dot Taxi Incentive Program is therefore welcomed. This initiative is a good example of how effective governance make a difference by investing in projects that not only protect passengers' safety, but also encourages quality services while improving the standard of taxi driving. Deputy Speaker, the events of yesterday is a matter of grave concern. We respect the right of aggrieved parties to express themselves and to protest. However, these needs to be done without the infringement on the rights of others. Although undertakings were given that the protest action would be peaceful, none of those undertakings were complied and adhered to. Commuters were prevented from going to work, school children were prevented from going to school, Golden Arrow buses and other private property and infrastructure were burned. These acts of wanton criminality cannot be tolerated, and therefore we condemn it in the strongest terms. Deputy Speaker, as South Africa moves towards a post-COVID society, the Western Cape Provincial Government has acted fast and decisively to ensure that our province and its residents transition in a manner that grows the provincial economy, protects jobs, attracts investment, and is centered around ensuring the dignity in the services that it delivers. Let us work together and push the economy forward as we navigate through the post-COVID environment. #JustDignity. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable America. I now recognise Honourable Clerco. You there, Honourable Clerco? Can I confirm that Honourable Clerco is online? He's not online. I'm going to move on then. Thank you very much. I now recognise Honourable Minister Schaefer.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Today is the last day of the first term for the 2022 school year, a term that has seen learners return to full-time attendance following our calls for adjusted direction. I thank all the teachers, officials and parents who have supported our learners in making the adjustment back to daily attendance as we all get to grips with the longer-term management of this pandemic. Our team has done very well in managing the placement of learners, but of course, with the return of learners full-time, the issue of overcrowding has reared its head in many of our schools again. It is a logical consequence, unfortunately, that if there has been insufficient funding over consecutive years, the only way to place learners is to crowd classrooms. This is not what we want and not what is best for education. It is also not confined to the Western Cape. Other provinces are taking strain as the sheer scale of theft from the national fiscus and economy-destroying policies by the ANC take a massive toll on service delivery. This is demonstrated by the violent protest at the DBE's head offices in Gauteng recently and Limpopo education officials being held hostage over a shortage of school spaces. And we are back on the treadmill again as applications for the 2023 school year have now opened. It is most unfortunate that the more we try and move forward into the 21st century ways of doing things, the more we are stymied by the incompetence of the national government and entities. We put a huge amount of effort into the online admissions process, only to have problems in the very day it started opening as a result of issues at the State Information Technology Agency, commonly known as SETA, which we are compelled by law to use. We have to be compelled because we certainly wouldn't use them voluntarily. That is how states maintain monopolies and prevent competition, fodder for a failed state. This has affected our admission site to the understandable anger of parents, but is unfortunately not because of matters within our control. Fortunately, we have managed to find solutions to some of their service failures, and the site is running more smoothly. Applications for over 82,000 learners have already been completed on the system, with more arriving every minute. But we appeal yet again to parents, despite the irritations and problems we've had, to take note of the 15th of April deadline for application. Contrary to claims by some political parties, the online system is neither new nor inaccessible. It helps us ensure that applications are completed accurately, reduces the administrative burden for schools and officials, reduces travel and leave costs to parents who previously would have had to apply to each school physically, and also helps weed out illegal practices in admissions. There are a number of ways for parents to apply at locations where facilities and connectivity is available, and the site is 0 rated. The more parents apply on time, the better we can plan to cope with the continuous increases in the number of learners joining our schools each year. But challenges remain, even when they do apply on time, given the persistent underfunding I have referred to, which has left us struggling to keep our heads above water and deal with the challenge of constantly increasing placement demands in our province. So we welcome the substantial additions in this budget to education. It will take some of the pressure off by allowing us to build more classrooms, schools, and employ more teachers. It will assist us in being able to expand our offerings in pursuit of our STEAMAC vision, in terms of which our aim is to empower our youth to get the skills they need to participate actively in the economy, to get jobs and to create jobs, which are crucial to the Western Cape Recovery Plan. I shall expand more on this during my budget speech next week. One of the crucial things we need to do as part of the recovery plan is address the learning losses caused by COVID. We are the only province to have invested in a credible measure of testing via our systemic tests, independently set, marked, and internationally benchmarked. Whilst national government and all the other provinces have kowtowed to unions that are hell-bent on resisting any form of accountability, we have actual evidence of where the learning losses are, and we can use this evidence to ensure that we target our interventions appropriately. Unfortunately, the results of the 2021 systemic tests were as we feared. COVID-19 has reversed the steady improvement in results that we had made prior to the pandemic, with a particularly strong impact on the foundation phase. We are not surprised by this, as we know just how much the extended school closures and disruptions affected our learners. We know that learners in poorer communities were especially hard hit by not being able to attend schools, which astoundingly the ANC members of this House demanded should remain closed. But at least now we have additional funding. It will assist us in being able to address this. It will still be crucial to continue building successful partnerships with the private sector, such as those we have established in our collaboration schools, which are offering new learning opportunities to our children, where there would otherwise be none. I'm delighted that after the ANC opposed the collaboration schools model, Member Syed recently visited Gouda a while ago and spoke about a public-private partnership to create a high school, just like the collaboration schools. I trust that he will reach out to the ANC's alliance partner, SATU, and persuade them to drop their opposition to these schools, so that we can move forward and provide more exciting opportunities, such as we are seeing at Jakes Gerwel Technical High School in Bonnievale and Apex High School, which has achieved incredibly good results. That is the difference between the DA and the ANC. The DA creates legislation that enables partnerships such as this for the benefit of our residents. The ANC creates legislation that restricts us and stifles innovation, such as the act forcing us to use CETA. Only when the party of enablement is in power in South Africa will we succeed. So we will use the additional funding allocated to us as best we can to promote opportunity for all our learners and ensure that they leave school with the skills they need that give them the sense of dignity they deserve. And we will continue to look for ways to enable rather than disable. This budget is the first for many years that will enable education to address some of our myriad challenges, and we welcome it. Thank you, Speaker, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Sean August.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is no secret that the Western Cape is an extremely wealthy province, both in resources, human capital, and its fiscus. As rich as this province is, the people of the Western Cape still go without the basics. Daily we see the grave deal of poverty, inequality, institutionalized discrimination, and the status quo that this very government keeps reinforcing either willfully or as a consequence of negligence. The budget MEC Mania delivered was a rehash of all the budget speeches that came before. If one were to investigate the annual budget addresses since this administration's inception, you'd find that little changes were made to the province's budgetary priorities, despite circumstances have drastically changed since 2009. Considering the rollercoaster ride that the people of this province have been on for the past 2 years, how lives and livelihoods were impacted, poor economic development, joblessness, and increasing cost of living, how all these harsh conditions affected citizens, but it was this government prerogative to return 891 million back to the provincial treasury from the Department of Education and underspent 46 million in its 2019-20 human settlements budget. This government is calling for urgent action to stimulate economic growth, but the economy will not grow if departments decide to sit on much needed cash reserves and starving the people of this province their basic needs in the process. Just earlier this month, the South African Human Rights Commission's trend analysis report shows that the DA-run Western Cape has the highest number of active cases in the country, a total of 1,592 complaints in the Western Cape, which is nearly 3 times as high as the next province and accounts for 26% of the total number of complaints being managed by the Commission in the country. This is reflected in its callous budgeting. Nevertheless, the budget did get some things right, like the increase in social development and the repeated focus on the infrastructure investment, arguably one of our most important avenues in which to generate mass job creation. This is welcomed, as I've been calling for a change how to address crime. As a former warden, I know that our current response to crime just simply isn't cutting it, despite cities like Cape Town's protestation to the contrary. We simply cannot just arrest everyone. So increasing social development's budget gives this department room to diversify programs that can address the systemic challenges that lead to crime and in so doing, stop crime before it happens. In conclusion, this budget should have reflected the hopes and aspirations of our people. Instead, it bears testament of the fact that this administration has no concrete plan for all the citizens of the Western Cape. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable August. I now recognise Honourable Minister Murray.
Deputy Speaker, following the Minister Mainier's budget to move forward, we will support our strategic priorities allocating to jobs 19.6 million, safety 4.4 million, well-being 111.3 million, in infrastructure 30.3 billion. As history has shown time and again, through many struggles, nations and humanity as a whole have experienced the arts, creative innovation and sport have been the shared reprieve, restoring hope and inspirational motivation to move towards our common goals to overcome hardships together. As we are moving forward, the aftermath of feelings of loneliness, anxiety, boredom and grief, while seeking a sense of safety during the triple crisis of a global pandemic, a brutal economic downturn, and a profound social and cultural dislocation, is still lingering. As safety is a key priority of the Western Cape government, I'm honoured to have been entrusted with the role of Acting Minister Community Safety to ensure the continuity of the department's pivotal programs and to actively be involved in meeting the imperatives of the safety plan in the interim. While at provincial level we do not have control over the police, the Department of Community Safety has played an instrumental role in improving safety for all who call the Western Cape home. However, as the Western Cape government, we are mandated to promote and develop cultural affairs and sport at a provincial level, and as the Minister of Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport, I can confidently acknowledge that there is a great synergy in creating safer communities through sport and culture. Capacitating safety partnerships with communities and stakeholders supports effective oversight in creating safer spaces, and through the years of engagement, I firmly believe sport and culture to be the catalyst of this needed social investment. Premier Windy said in his SOPA, and I quote, "We are going to beef up oversight. We are going to beef it up," unquote. With the renamed Department of Oversight and Community Safety, we will be a force to be reckoned with. Deputy Speaker, I note a concern within the community policing forum structures in the Western Cape regarding what the impact of the establishment of the Provincial Secretariat in terms of Section 16 of the Civilian Secretariat for Police Act 2 of 2011 will be on the continued existence and operation of community policing forums. I want to reaffirm that the Western Cape Government, through its Department of Community Safety, is committed to fulfill its mandate conferred by Section 206 of the Constitution, Sections 66 and 68 of the Constitution of the Western Cape, as well as Section 5 of the Western Cape Community Safety Act. This mandate, amongst other things, includes monitoring police conduct and overseeing the effectiveness and efficiency of the police service in the province by assisting community policing forums through the provision of funding, training, and resources in order to promote good relationships between the South African Police Service and communities, which will in turn make the Western Cape a safer place for all. It is for this reason that we are awaiting legal advice on the best way forward. Deputy Speaker, engagement with cultural affairs and sport creates a positive atmosphere, empowering individuals to make healthier choices through becoming more inspired, involved, questioning, and willing to take risks. It is our duty to create an enabling environment through which our youth can thrive and feel a sense of belonging and safety. Contrary to popular belief, we are not a people at risk, but rather a people with potential. As a DCAS, we are committed to economic transformation and job creation. We facilitate work opportunity and various capacity building opportunities through programs aimed at youth acquiring skills to facilitate their entry into the job market, supporting and funding cultural and sporting tourism through festivals and sport events across the province contributes to job creation and work opportunities. Deputy Speaker, die verslapping van die COVID-19 regulasies word verwelkom. Die Weskaap is die sport- en kultuurbestemming van Suid-Afrika in die wêreld. Ons beleef tans die bedrywigste tyd in die Weskaap. Dis die Kaapstad Fietstoer, Cape Epic, Suidoosterfees, Woordfees, KAKNK, rugby in die DHL Kaapstad Stadion, ballet en kunste Kaap, opvoerings in die Baxter, net om 'n paar te noem. Meer mense, meer geleenthede, meer inkomste. Maar volgens Hugo Theart, artistieke direkteur van die KAKNK Fees, maak die nuwe regulasies nie veel verskil aan die situasie nie. Lara Voet, artistieke direkteur en CEO van die Baxter, stem saam. Lokale onderdak of teaters mag net 50% gevul word met sosiale afstandssitplekke gegee. 100% kapasiteit in teaters en lokale sal broodnodige inkomste vir kunstenaars verseker. Ons moet ook nie vergeet van diegene wat afhanklik is van werk in beide die sport- en kultuursektore nie. Die plekaanwysers, die kaartjieverkopers, kelners, roomhuisverkopers, al die teaterbystandpersoneel, tegnisie ensovoorts. Die terugkeer na groter gehore, vol sale en stadions dra by tot die geestesgesondheid en sosiale insluiting van gemeenskappe en vergesteld hoop. With social inclusive programs, the DCAS augment social protection policies by mitigating social vulnerabilities of women, children, the girl child, persons with disabilities, youth and the age, through art, culture and sport programs. We are protecting women by improving laws and policies and raising awareness of women's rights. We speak about safeguarding in sport terms. We meaningfully engage in all the symptoms, the legal, economic and political factors of gender-based violence, the unequal power relations between men and women, the myriad of factors which contribute to GBV, and the interplay of these factors which lies at the root of the problem. But is this enough? We need to think differently about GBV, be more robust about any form of GBV, including hate crimes and abuse against the LGBTQIA+. Therefore, I wholeheartedly support Premier Windy. We announced in his SOPA the Violence Prevention Unit, which will be a dedicated unit. 'n eenheid van voorkoming van geweld wat in die Departement van Gesondheid sal wees. Die eenheid sal data gebruik om ingrypings te ontwerp en toe te pas wat voorkom dat geweld plaasvind. Phumzile Mhlambo-Nikula, UN Under Secretary General and UN Women Executive Director said, "The work we do for and about women and girls is often about the things women are fighting against. Sport gives us
Thank
an
you.
opportunity to do something that puts girls and women in the best positive
You can
light.
finish off,
It
Minister.
shows off their strength and capacity to be winners. I wish to encourage all victims of sexual offences to come forward and report their perpetrators. We cannot allow these injustices to continue being perpetrated in our communities. We must stand up against them." I
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Before I recognise the Honourable Christians, I recognise Honourable Claire Hoare is now online. I have given him the opportunity to speak just after Honourable Nkondlo. So Honourable Bartman, if you can just hold it before the end. Honourable Christians, I recognise you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As the ACDP, I want to respond to the budget table by Honourable Minister David Mania in this House. Deputy Speaker, let me first say, I really believe that spending so much money on this pandemic is unnecessary and a waste of money. Allocation of 777 million for the health platform, which will spend to fight against this COVID. Another 198 million for rollout of vaccines, and it goes on and it works over R1 billion. Let me just read some of from the memorandum that was handed over to the union buildings on the 21st of March by our national leader, Reverend Kenneth Meswe. This is what it says, and it's against protecting our constitution. We, the free people of South Africa, gave birth to and recognize the constitution that's meant to empower and uplift us, not to disempower us, and not to strip us of our freedom and dignity, as it has been over the last 2 years. We, the free people of South Africa, have come here today to declare that there is a national crisis, and this is a call for all South Africans to unite and defend the same constitution that we fought for, and also specifically the Bill of Human Rights. That is what we want to, that is what I want to say. That's why I say it's a waste of money. Minister Mania says that vaccines has won over the virus. Many of the people don't want to be forced to be vaccinated, and that is the point of the ACDP. And the important thing is it's now happening at UWC, where our members were standing with placards yesterday, standing up and saying, okay, so
Honourable Member, 1 minute, if you can just take your seat. Honourable Dugmore.
I would just like to ask whether the Honourable Christians would be prepared to answer the question as to whether he is vaccinated.
No, don't ask the question. Don't ask the question. Ask the question if you take a question. Honourable Member.
Deputy Speaker, yesterday our members were standing in front of UWC because now students that want to graduate is now forced to be vaccinated. It's taking the rights away of our students, taking the rights away of people that saying that we will not be vaccinated. Let me just get back to education. The education department, the WCED, talks about quality education for every learner in every classroom. And then when you go and you read the papers, it's not happening on the ground. There's no quality education. There's no quality education, dignified education in our schools. And here in the paper, don't turn our kids away. We know that money can be spent, more money can be spent on education because we cannot manage 70 people students in our classrooms. And yet parents are saying we are not receiving that quality education. I want to go further when it comes to community safety. Now, I've always said that, and I said this in the State of the Province address. Where is our walking bus members that is at home? More than 5,000 walking bus members is at home. Bread took off the table by this current mayor and the ministers talking about, you know, quality of life, quality. This is not quality. I'm asking this budget to make some room under the community safety for the walking bus to come back to bring our communities safer to our schools. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christians. I now recognise Honourable Baku Force.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Am I audible?
You are audible.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. A couple of weeks ago, MEC David Maynard tabled the so-called A budget to push forward. The budget was preceded by the World Bank report, which showed that South Africa is the most unequal country in the world, with race playing a determined factor in a society where 10% of population owns more than 80% of wealth. The present day inequalities are a direct result of centuries long policies of apartheid, colonialism, which entrapped Black people in poverty, limited opportunities to access quality education and participate in the labor market. This remains largely unresolved 28 years into our democratic dispensation, especially in the Western Cape, which is the last bastion of white privilege. When tabling his budget, MEC Maynard ignored the above and instead bragged about Western Cape being a special place with the best health system, the best education system, and best infrastructure. It is for this reason that we must amend the theme of the budget to declare a budget to push forward the acceleration of social transformation in the Western Cape. While I'm tempted to call the claims by the MEC hogwash, it is correct that we have the best education, healthcare, and infrastructure for a select few. For the majority of our couple, this remains a distant dream. Honorable Speaker, the healthcare system in the poor working class communities is but one example. The Khayelitsha District Hospital Management and Board requested an additional 150 million to improve service and deliver the best healthcare system in Khayelitsha. This government declined to allocate any additional funds to KDH because the DA believes that best healthcare is a privilege reserved for a select few. It is for the same reason that there is no clear time frame for rebuilding of GF Yoster, which closed over a decade ago. It's also the same reason the DA is closing down clinics in working class communities in the city. Deputy Speaker, the budget commits to the priorities, the so-called 3 North Stars, including job safety and well-being. I want to ask today, job safety and well-being for who? In answering the question, I take a look at the 132,000 increase for unemployment in the province between Q3 of 2020 and the Q3 of 2021. During this period, unemployment increased to over 794,000. Of this, the 372,000 were colored, followed by Africans at over 353,000. While unemployment for white people stood at just over 54,000. On strategies to address unemployment, the MEC must tell us what will he do to address these race imbalances. The same trend is observed on safety when unemployment is highest in those areas that are in the top 30 meta presence in the province. The continued mass murders in Kailicha, Kukuletu, and the ongoing gang violence in Manenberg are testimony to this. Premier, where is your safety plan to address these mass murders? Where is your safety plan to address these matters? The people are asking. We long warned that at its current form, the plan will not work and you ignored us. Who told you that it is not enough to only invest in boots on the ground? You must also invest towards address causative factors of violent crimes. There needs to be more invested towards CCTVs, improved lighting and accessibility in the meta hotspot. Deputy Speaker, we are disappointed that not enough funding is set aside of humanitarian relief. In the face of rising child hunger and food poverty, the 2020 General Household Survey reported that 13% of child and 10% of total population in the province lived in households reporting insufficient food. This budget makes investment towards community nutrition development centers and soup kitchens and solution to this. Will not bring sustainable solution for poverty. We must continue making calls for the accelerated implementation of the basic income grant additional. This government should consider increase the number of funded CNDCs in the poor working class communities, as only one CNDCs per community is not enough. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, the shenanigans of Albert Fritz exposed a deep culture of abuse of females in this provincial government. It is disappointing that Farrell Payne and Wesley Bakis remain in their job while they have pending court cases for alleged sexual assault. We are also disappointed that despite our request, Robert MacDonald is yet to appear before the Social Development Committee to account about what he knows about the free scandals. This shows DA
your time is up.
does not care about the plight of GBV victims. We call for increased funding for victim empowerment program and for a transversal GBV and sexual assault policy in the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member, you obviously didn't hear me. I did not want to cut you off, but please be mindful, those members that are connected virtually, that when your time is up, you need to finish off. Thank you. I now recognise Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Ministers, as the Minister of Finance, Honourable David Maynier, indicated in his speech, this budget aims to push forward every aspect of jobs, safety and well-being. Unfortunately, the ANC national government has been putting numerous hurdles in the path to achieve this. They are still undermining trust in the economy by proposing devastating amendments to expropriation legislation. This follows in the wake of damaging prohibitions on trade and service delivery over the last 2 years. These include the ban on the sale of cooked food, cigarettes, certain clothing and certain beverages. Even the transport of bulk wine to ports for export was banned. In the process, many lost their businesses, jobs and livelihoods. If the national government genuinely cared for the youth, genuinely cared for the well-being of the poor, and genuinely cared about the levels of inequality, it would admit its role in damaging the economy. And it would admit its role in the deterioration of our ports, our trains, the police, and the problems with the current census. The list is endless. These are just some elements of the growing failure of the national government. The recent attacks and violence in Robertson between contract workers from Zimbabwe and Lesotho clearly illustrate the failures of national government. Where are the labour inspectors to check the working conditions of foreign nationals working in South Africa? Where are the immigration officials that should be inspecting work permits? Where is the border control to ensure that only people with the necessary documentation enter into South Africa? And where is the police that should protect innocent people from attacks? We've also recently seen how the National Department of Agriculture, responsible for managing pests, failed to control the outbreaks of locusts. And as so often in the past, the provincial government had to come to the rescue by allocating 5 million rand. Again, this provincial administration pushed forward and funded the response. The work on the Clan William Dam is delayed by 8 years and will now only be completed in 2026, if we can believe the minister. The repeated delays with the construction work have cost us 9,000 jobs and are delaying investments in the sector of an estimated 1.8 billion rand. Again, due to a lack of action from the national government, it is the Department of Agriculture in this province that pushed forward to initiate a study on the increase of the capacity of the Buffeljas Dam near Swellendam. After years of provincial pushing, construction work on the feeder canal for the Brandvlei Dam eventually commenced. Now we are pushing the National Department of Water and Sanitation to allocate the additional water usage rights in time for next summer. I am not holding my breath that this will happen. How ironic that the leader of the opposition this morning dared to criticize this provincial government on the national government's failures of land reform. Land reform is the mandate of the national government. Elandskloof, some 11 kilometers from Citrusdal, which I visited last Monday on Human Rights Day, can you see the irony in that, was lauded as the very first land reform project of the ANC government. It is another failed initiative, and a once productive farm was allowed to go to ruin. The Western Cape Department of Agriculture is ready and able to support beneficiaries of land reform, but it should be involved with these initiatives from the onset, including the identification and training of beneficiaries. In this way, we can push forward with successful land reform and ensure that farms are not only allocated to ANC cronies. Let me congratulate the Minister and the Department of Agriculture in this province for pushing forward on the cooperation agreement with the Department of Food and Agriculture of the state of California. This will allow us to push forward with climate-smart agricultural practices. Minister Maynier referred in his speech to the great natural beauty of our province.
Honourable Vestazen, have you got two devices, Nick? It's next to you. Can I just check that whoever's got two devices, please not to put it near the microphone. Can you? It
must be somebody else,
Deputy Speaker. That's fine, Honourable van der Westhuizen. We'll just mute everybody else. Thank you very much. You may proceed. Apologies, we couldn't hear you there.
Minister Maynier referred to the great natural beauty of our province. Cape Nature has pushed forward and therefore have seen a huge upswing in the number of tourists. In this regard, it has contributed and pushed forward our economic recovery in the province. And while we push forward, we have to deal with a failed national government. Minister Barbara Creasy was even forced to approach the High Court to review the poor decisions of her very own department regarding fishing quotas. Her department is ill prepared to prevent the poaching of crayfish and abalone, putting these species that is so important to the Western Cape at risk. The Western Cape government is also pushing forward to address climate change. Air quality is important, but air pollution knows no provincial boundaries. According to Section 24A of the Constitution, we have a right to an environment that is not harmful to our health and well-being. How ironic. The court last week, and I quote, lambasted National Environment Minister Barbara Creasy and the predecessor Nomvula Mokonyane for their failures, inordinate delays, and foot dragging in tackling the harmful and potentially fatal levels of air pollution in the so-called Highveld priority area. And when the courts confirm what we all know, namely that the national government is failing, it is the courts and the very constitution that the leader of the opposition quoted this morning extensively that come under attack from ANC politicians. Clearly, the ANC has identified the conflicting views on the constitution within its own ranks as a huge risk for the ANC. Fortunately, there is hope for the people of this province. As Minister Mayne declared, through the Western Cape's budget, we are pushing forward to give hope and to achieve our strategic objectives. We are fortunate that the Departments of Agriculture, as well as the Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, have a track record of creating jobs, improving safety and well-being. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Peter Murray.
Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Minister, members. The Freedom Front Plus supports the budget unreservedly. It was obviously a budget to manage and defeat a resurgence of the fifth wave of COVID-19. It's a budget of hope, drafted by well-qualified officials. I therefore have no reason not to accept it. It's also a budget intended to start an economic recovery, boosting tourism, create jobs, and improving community safety in the Western Cape, in spite of corruption and wasteful spending still existing at national level. The Minister and his officials therefore deserve unreserved praise. I would have preferred greater budget for community safety and policing in general, though, because reports have shown that we have a maximum of 40% conviction rates in South Africa. Why arrest gangsters if they have a 60% chance of being freed because of poor investigative policing, poorly trained detectives? 26.3% of police cells have no holding cells. Police stations have no holding cells. 68.4% of police stations have no access controls. 10.5% has no detention cells. Police cannot even speak or address the public in their preferred language. So when you go to Mitchell's Plain and you can't speak English, go home and do your own investigations. They don't know what you're complaining about. We need more powers to control our own police force with investigative powers. We need more CCTV cameras in crime hotspots. We are in deep, deep trouble. I want to quote Bishop Tutu when he said, "Watch out, watch out." The fight against crime, unemployment, corruption, and COVID is far from over. These are chronic destructive forces. Even our president has become a prisoner of his own cabinet and his party. He can't do what he likes, because Azama Zuma tell him what he must do. Unless the Western Cape succeed in receiving greater autonomous powers to decide our own future, we are doomed. We are like people who sit in the barge in stormy seas singing, "O Weskaapland, O Weskaapland, jou het ons lief bo alles," terwyl the water is over our heads already.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Plato.
Honourable Deputy Speaker and honourable members, the past year has been difficult for our country and for our province. The COVID-19 pandemic continues not only to pose a serious risk to public health, but also to the economic and social security that underpins our citizens' collective well-being. Many in our province have found themselves sick as a result of the pandemic. Many have found themselves hungry due to the destruction of their livelihoods. But, Honourable Speaker, this budget ensures that those who are most in need will receive the assistance that they require, paving the way for an equitable and efficient recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The Department of Social Development has allocated funding for a number of measures to ease the burdens placed on Western Cape residents by the ongoing national state of disaster. Unemployment in the Western Cape has risen by 5.4% since the start of the lockdown, with associated strains on the ability of the unemployed to maintain their food security. Under this budget, the Western Cape Provincial Government will continue to provide meals at community nutrition and development centres and will partner with local municipalities and NGOs to keep these programs running. The budget has seen a substantial increase in monies allocated towards protecting and nurturing the province's youth, with an increase of almost 10 million rand in this area. We will expand the community-based early prevention and early intervention programs. These programs seek to protect those younger members of our society who too often find themselves at risk of neglect and victimization. Initiatives such as the Rasia model and the Eye on the Child program ensure that children are adequately cared for and are free to enjoy their education while limiting the influence of social ills on their development. Deputy Speaker, for those who are approaching adulthood, the budget will further fund the Youth Cafes initiatives, which provide holistic skills development for those who are not employed or involved in further education. With these measures, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Department will ensure that our youth, the future of our province and the future of our country, are given the best possible circumstances in which to achieve their doubtless potential. Additionally, and in line with the President's announcement at the 2019 State of the Nation address, the provincial government is on track with the transfer of the early childhood development function from the Department of Social Development to the Department of Education by 1st April 2022. Speaker, these measures will ensure that the social fabric of our province remains intact in the face of the pandemic. But we must also deal with the pandemic itself. Vaccination rates in the Western Cape are particularly encouraging, with almost 60% of citizens having received at least one dose of the vaccine. But we have done more than simply react to the pandemic. The Department of Health has also ensured that funds are allocated for community health initiatives that once again focus on the protection of the most underprivileged in society. For the upcoming financial year, the department will prioritize the funding of infrastructure development, which expands our ability to care for those affected by TB, HIV and AIDS, and psychiatric issues. These measures, in addition to our COVID response, move the Western Cape one step closer towards reaching its goal of patient-focused quality care for all. While the battle to overcome the COVID pandemic in the Western Cape progresses steadily, our province faces another pandemic. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape government has committed to eradicating the scourge of gender-based violence from this province and from this country, no matter where such instances may occur. Implementing the Domestic Violence Prevention Bill remains a key priority for the provincial government. And this budget provides the financial backing to achieve this task. This budget allows for the further funding of the Department of Social Development's psychosocial care for GBV survivors and the expansion of our province's dedicated GBV shelters, which offer a vital place of refuge for those who would otherwise have no option but to stay with their abusers. The Department of Health will continue to train its staff to treat incidents of GBV at its facilities and will prioritize its emergency response to instances of GBV when they occur. We understand, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that to truly end the GBV pandemic will require a seismic shift from all sectors of society and that there is no quick fix to resolve this complicated issue. But this budget allows us to begin to treat the symptoms of this disease and to provide relief to the millions affected by it. To conclude, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we are confident that the allocations contained in this budget will allow this government to fulfill its promise to the citizens of the Western Cape, to heal the sick, to feed the hungry, to nurture and protect our children, and to end the twin pandemics of COVID-19 and GBV. As we push forward from the pandemic, we cannot allow anyone to be left behind. With this budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the DA-run Western Cape government reaffirms its commitment to the citizens of the Western Cape, no matter their circumstances, to ensure dignity, safety, and well-being for all. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Plater. I now recognise Honourable Brinkhays.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Al-Jamaah Party reiterates its position that each of the 400 wards in the Western Cape province should receive their own budgets. This will give wards in poor areas an advantage to redress the inequalities of the apartheid era. A recent study by Stats SA reveals that the Western Cape upscales neighborhoods such as Bykowen, Bantry Bay, Camps Bay, Clifton, Fresnay, Greenpoint, Sea Point, and Moyle Point, where the wealthy and the middle class resides. All these upscaling in the leafy suburbs, while on the Cape Flats like Langa, Menenberg, Nyanga, Delft, Guguletu, Bonteheuwel, Elsie's River, Kailicha, people suffer daily from food insecurity, lack of drinking water, toilets disconnected from the sewage system, and increasing crime rate. The first step for a budget for each ward is to use zero-based budgeting. And Al-Jamaah looks forward to workshops on this. I would like to be part of a study group to do zero-based budgeting for one or more wards as a pilot project. That means every need, like an IDP for the ward selected, must be done. Nobody must be left out. The next step is to find the money to implement, and this may take 10 years. Nobody must be left out. Premier, you must set the vision and let us carry out the mission in our oversight role. Al-Jamaah does not support this DA budget. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Minister Simmers.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier, Honourable Cabinet colleagues present and logged in virtually, but also members present in the House and also logged in virtually. Deputy Speaker, with the tabling of the budget for the 2022-2023 financial year and an allocation of 32.9 billion rand over the medium term on infrastructure, the Western Cape government is once again demonstrating its commitment to ensuring that spaces and places are created that will assist to improve the lives of all the residents of our province. Hierdie begroting dui daarop aan dat ons daartoe verbind is om integrasie deur infrastruktuurontwikkeling te verseker sodat ons mense in veiliger, verbeterde en waardiger omstandighede kan leef, leer en speel. This is particularly evident in our Conradie Park development, where many people already enjoy the benefits of a real integrated development, access to affordable living, work, learning and playing areas. Hierdie ontwikkeling is beslis 'n uitstekende voorbeeld van hoe 'n dinamiese regering wat vooruit dink politieke toekomsvisie laat realiseer. Deputy Speaker, an investment on infrastructure leads to a myriad of opportunities. These include the creation of cross-sector job opportunities, ensuring that residents can live in a safer and dignified manner, while generally helping with their overall well-being. Dat die Weskaap soveel klem plaas op infrastruktuurontwikkeling is daarom beslis nie per toeval nie, maar strategies omdat dit vooruitgang verseker in die kort, medium en langtermyn. Deputy Speaker, it is quite unfortunate that certain members in this House fails to fully comprehend what is meant by the advancement of infrastructure. And allow me to take you on a journey of our realm development, or commonly known as PENIL, which is another excellent example of how infrastructure development will lead to improved living conditions. This project, which has a budget allocation of 762 million rand and will include a mixture of subsidized and affordable housing opportunities, along with land parcels for community facilities, schools, and commercial uses, will empower approximately 8,000 beneficiaries from many different backgrounds and areas to live together in improved conditions. We are waiting for the entire 200 hectares to be made available for construction so that we can start realizing dreams. To date, it has already created over 70 job opportunities, and as it progresses, it is estimated that it will create a further 100 local jobs over a 12-month period. Incorporate 16 subcontractors for civil works over an 8-month cycle, and a further 228 subcontractors for top structures over another 12-month period. Currently, the earthworks around the reservoir area and the bulk water supply line are underway and progressing at a rapid pace. The electrical substation is expected to be completed during this financial year. The Bannerman Bridge construction has commenced, while internal roads have already been concluded. Deputy Speaker, this is but one of the developments where we are demonstrating our enthusiasm and the full spectrum of our ability to deliver projects where residents will be able to live integrated lives with access to economic, educational opportunities and recreational spaces. Met die tyd sal die volle prentjie gesien kan word en tasbaar wees. Want ek weet, sekere lede aan die oorkant van die vloer, Deputy Speaker, het nie die vermoë om dit te kan visualiseer tans nie. Deputy Speaker, the design of our human settlements infrastructure is developed in a manner where our residents feel safe within their immediate vicinity. In fact, we regard the creation of neighborhoods that are safe to our residents as an important part of the sustainable human settlements mandate. We are rising to the challenge of safe neighborhoods because we can clearly not rely on the national ANC-led government and the SAPs to provide the most elementary human right, safety. To this end, we have adopted a multidimensional approach which includes the spatial design of neighborhoods. Amongst others, these include courtyards that are secluded and surrounded by units that ensures a watchful eye can be kept on particularly the children while they are playing. We are also ensuring or installing street lights, which improves visibility at night and helps in identifying criminality and or to combat any criminal intent. Deputy Speaker, we live in an era that cannot be divorced from the use of technology. This is part of the reason why we've adopted a hands-on approach to ensuring that ICT infrastructure benefits the citizens of the province in the most advantageous way. For the 2022-2023 financial year, we will ensure that existing systems become more user-friendly, which will result in better monitoring of projects and uptake by beneficiaries, while ensuring easy access for residents to register their housing needs by improving the WCG app. We are also in the process of piloting EDGE, which stands for Excellence in Design for Greater Efficiencies, a certification project. This certification, which is a green building certification system, is used to optimize resource efficiency in the construction of houses and compliance thereof. 700 units in Fasante Kraal, which is situated in the Cape Metropole, will be piloted as part of this initiative. This initiative marks the first time in the country that government-subsidized houses will be certified as green, normally reserved mainly for houses constructed for high-end users. Furthermore, water-saving measures have been introduced on all human settlements projects, and in this regard, contractors are now using or exploring the use of groundwater, be it through boreholes or well points or other non-potable water sources. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, daar is so baie voorbeelde wat nog ter tafel gelê kan word. Maar ek wil egter aan lede voorstel om bietjie uit te kom en alle projekte te besoek, sodat hulle kan sien hoe die infrastruktuurontwikkeling 'n massiewe en lewenslange verandering laat gebeur reg oor die Weskaap. Baie dankie.
Thank you very much, Minister. I now recognize Honourable Nkondlo. You there, Honourable Nkondlo? Can we just check if Honourable Nkondlo is online? If the table staff can just confirm for me. Going. Gone. Honourable Klejo, are you ready to do your speech?
Yes, Deputy Speaker. Yes.
You may proceed.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker. The budget tabled by the Western Cape Minister of Finance and Economic Opportunities does not differ with the budgets tabled in this House in the past before. And to say the least, this recent one also does not inspire any confidence. The government continues to rely heavily on the private sector with the hope that it will provide meaningful jobs that will improve people's lives for the better, and this often proven to be false. It is high time that the government assist individuals and groups meaningful and with adequate resources to start their own businesses. The role of the private sector should be to assist these individuals with business plans and ideas so that they can sustain themselves and create employment opportunities for more. Similarly, when it comes to the issue of agriculture in the province, we are tired of being told that the province is assisting existing black emerging farmers with resources, but there is nothing to show that. We want this government to pinpoint and say we have assisted so many emerging black farmers and so many to acquire so many hectares of land, and we also assisted them with funds and resources in order to start operating their own farms from scratch. Our people have been staying in the pavement for far too long. Now in the areas of Observatory and outside Arcadia places since 2019. The situation has become even worse now, to start to an extent that their children are playing closer to the main roads, and of which they are risking their lives of being hit by passing cars. We therefore appeal to the government that their budget does not address the plight of residents of informal settlements, such as Izweletu, Etembeni, Marikana, and Sutendal. The area of Danone and Kosovo is still going with a snail pace of being addressed in terms of their depopulation. In terms of crime, we call on the safety plan that is not doing anything in areas such as Menenberg and Glovini and Kanini informal settlement and other areas where our people are subjected to serious challenges of lack of police patrolling. In terms of healthcare, we still see that the department is failing to absorb the very same people it utilized to curb the COVID pandemic during the serious lockdown of COVID-19. And now that they find themselves understaffed, but they fail dismally to absorb such people. Communities in Makassar and Ceres have been up in arms against the department due to the long queues which the elderly and disabled people are subjected to on a daily basis. This budget doesn't address any of that.
Thank you.
As well as in the education sector, where we still have got high numbers of children who still do not find any place to call a school. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Klejo. I now recognize Honourable Nkondlo. I see you online.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and my apologies because my computer, I think, just froze at the time you were calling me.
Not a problem.
Deputy Speaker, honourable members, it is important, firstly, to just dismiss some of the untruths, particularly when we started here about what is happening in public transport, an area very critical for all of us in light of the developments we see and the safety issues around this. The untruths in this House is important to unveil. That one of the things that the provincial government is not telling us is that there is progress in the central line, which already Minister Mbalula had committed by the end of July, with Bellville Cape Town route already resumed their line, southern line also. And the delays in the Philippi Langa and Khayelitsha route are due to the resettlement that is actually based on challenges of finding a suitable land for those citizens, something that was presented to us as the standing committee, and it is important that we tell citizens the truth. And again, it is important that also we share that once again, this DA government is not telling the public that at this point, as they speak about efficiency of public transport and demanding that be devolved into the city, that currently under the DA blue nose, that my city is running on a deficit of about 40 million rands, let alone I think the contribution of the impasse around how the permitting at this point is done. That where the taxi industry, you could find hundreds of taxis that are getting damaged in the sun at Ndabeni, where they are stored after being impounded. And the fact that last week in the debate of the committee, the PRE became mum when the representative of the Danun Taxi Association exposed once again untruths about them not having any backlog regarding operating licenses, but DTA await since last year November about 57 applications that to date have not been concluded, even though the requirements are such that 30 days is what should be the process of application. Then the question is, where is the red tape unit to ensure ease of doing business? Or is ease of doing business a function and an effort and investment of this government for only big commercial businesses instead of those that predominantly are coming from businesses that are of the poor? And we ask this question because this ease of doing business and the red tape continues with the likes of the informal traders that are taken to task and taken to court instead of being allowed to trade, so that the same issue of the second pandemic that the Premier always speaks about of ensuring livelihoods and opening the economy, it can't be only a purview of the few. And we're calling for this government to actually be very honest, and this government, when it talks about opportunities, to be opportunities that are enabled for all citizens, not only a few. The ANC welcomed the national budget of the Minister Enoch Godongwana a month ago. Among others, Minister Godongwana indicated that as far as the domestic outlook was concerned, our country would have revised the economic growth estimate for 2021 from 5.1% when the MTBBS was announced to 4.8%. Experienced this revision because of the impact of the global environment on our national economy. Commodity prices, which were on the rise in the first part of 2021, would have slowed down by the latter part of the year, and real GDP growth of 2.1% is projected for 2022, with a projection of 1.8 for the outer years. We had none of these kinds of analysis of projections for the Western Cape from the Honourable Mayor. All we hear instead is that 5 million will be allocated to the study of future fiscal sustainability, which once again does not indicate how is this particular province utilizing this initiative of future fiscal sustainability to delve in directly to the challenge of wealth inequality, income inequality, which is some of the challenges that are written on the wall, and studies have concluded around this. Even the Pero and Mero are paid scant attention to by a provincial government that simply makes announcements without the necessary plans and budgets. And this says little about this government that always claims to be evidence-based. At the SOPA, we had to listen to the Premier's announcement of new departments. And this was also concurred to by MEC Marais this morning. This budget completely ignores that announcement. Hardly any of the budget votes that we dealt with in the standing committees last week took cognizance of the fact that the Premier had actually made this announcement. We asked questions about the budget implications and the programming implications, so that we start to see movements around the actual money. Actually, we're told that if these would be affected, they would actually maybe be considered during the budget adjustment or in the next financial year. So this is a typical DA modus operandi we've come to learn of this provincial government, a stuntman leadership style, where you announce big plans, but there's nothing that comes of it. The Municipal Energy Resilience Program was announced with the same amount of fanfare, but when we asked for detail, we got little. The Premier Safety Plan was announced with great fanfare, and we asked for details in this house, and the budget, we had to wait. 800 million announcement to procure vaccines for Western Cape, another stunt, knowing such was not feasible and no evidence of any grand shortages at the time to this particular province. Finally, the DA, which has been governing in the Western Cape for more than a decade and nearly 2 in the city of Cape Town, announced with the same fanfare their housing policy. But like LIP, MERP, the Premier's new departments, this housing policy is all talk and no plan with no budget. And actually, the Cape Flats have seen and experienced repeated challenges of violence, gender-based violence, rapes, murders. Whilst under this DA government, we see no improvement in those communities, including their economic situation remains the same. And we would like to see this, what we are told by the DA, as their ability to ensure a Warsaw society where there is equal opportunity. Please start here in the Cape Flat so that you can speak about evidence of work that you have done to ensure that the kind of challenges experienced by those communities is something that the DA government is able to do. The Honorable Mayor announces with great glee the amount this provincial government is cutting on cost of employees and to ministerial offices. When will we see a cut to the consultant budget of this provincial government, as well as that of training? In the 2021 to 2022, the main appropriation was nearly R1 billion for consultant. This budget, the appropriation is still astronomically too high at 856 million. This provincial government spends 7 times more on consultants than it does on this provincial legislature. It spends twice as much as it does on consultants than on the community safety department, and nearly 3 times than what they spend on local government department. At the same time, this DA-led provincial government spends 711 million on training, while the ANC will certainly welcome employees in core departmental programs receiving training. The challenge is that 100% of the training budget in the provincial legislature budget is going to program 1, which is administration, a non-core function of the legislature. 100% of the training budget of local government department is going to program 1, administration, a non-core function of the department. The ANC wishes to thank and acknowledge the numerous grants allocated to this province by national government. This budget lacks the foresight to deal with the second pandemic the Premier so often talks about. And as the ANC, we cannot support this budget. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Murray, I hear you from here. If you could just lower your voice. I can hear you from here, and it's quite loud. So if you could just watch your.
Sorry, I'm really soft-spoken, you know.
All right, thank you very much, honourable members. I now recognise Honourable Bartman.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, as always, and I would like to say this in Afrikaans because I think maybe the Afrikaans language is a bit more outspoken in this regard, maar die oppositie sit die pot weer mis. They could have proposed new ideas on how we can better processes and procedures to better spend the money for the people of the Western Cape, of the people. But all of the items raised either fall squarely within the mandates of national government or within the mandates of local government. And as custodians, we are charged with spending the people's money to the benefit of the people in the best possible manner, at the lowest possible cost, and at the closest to the people. In terms of infrastructure, this budget will capacitate the provincial government in pushing forward to see true recovery and growth for residents. 19.6 billion rand will be allocated over the next 3 years on various programs and initiatives aimed at creating an economic ecosystem which will see support to all sectors. More than this, 30.3 billion rand set aside for infrastructure development is an investment in the economic and social well-being of all residents in the Western Cape. 870 million rand over the next 3 years will be spent on road infrastructure, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Further, 1.2 billion rand has been allocated over the medium term to upgrade and build new healthcare facilities and schools in our province. And while we are seeing great innovation and responsible fiscal management by the provincial government, in real terms, provincial budgets will not be increasing, and every cent will need to be stretched to continue to deliver the best possible services to residents. But Deputy Speaker, there are some matters that cannot go unchallenged. The opposition attempted to compare the treatment of the provincial government of government employees to to elected officials, but government employees are appointed in terms of labor laws and politicians are elected. And these labor laws are the same labor laws that are implemented by the very same ANC national government. So if we want better labor laws, then the opposition need to please assist us by WhatsApping their national counterparts. Deputy Speaker, the member Brinke has indicated that he doesn't understand zero-based budgeting and that he wants workshops on the matter. But I think member Brinke thinks that today is an IDP meeting, maar hy het niks gesê oor die provincial begroting nie. And Deputy Speaker, on zero-based budgeting, he attended the workshops of the budget committee. There was presentations on zero-based budgeting. He has the presentations. He doesn't even realize that exactly what he's asking for in terms of R1 million per award is exactly what you are not supposed to do in zero-based budgeting. He asked the exact same question to the Provincial Treasury and the National Treasury and the FFC, and they gave him the exact same answer. Dit gaan nie werk nie. Hy val van die wal af in die sloot, Deputy Speaker. Speaker, when it comes to law and lawmaking, it is important for legislators to ensure that we do not duplicate legislative mandates. Thus, in respect to the Environmental Commissioner, the first and most important question we need to ask ourselves is, does the current mandate exist within the legal regime? If the answer is yes, and it is, but if the answer is yes, then we need to ask ourselves what would make the Environmental Commissioner mandate different to the mandates currently held by the courts, by SAPS, by the Hawks, by the Green Scorpions, by provincial and local government spheres. Should there be such a different legislative mandate, then the final question we need to ask ourselves is how much will this cost, and are we able to spend that amount on it in comparison to, for example, education or even health budgetary constraints? In these questions, in and of itself, it isn't always easy to answer or as straightforward as one might believe. And even the ANC, during its term of the provincial government, did not want this particular office. So, Deputy Speaker, what is the difference now? On the Children's Commissioner, Deputy Speaker, it seems that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, if I'm allowed to use that phrasing. The ANC wants to claim this office as a success of their party, but no such commissioner exists in any other province other than the Western Cape. It's the Western Cape that has established this office and allocated budget to it. Hulle moet gaan regeer in die provinsies waar hulle regeer en hulle moet ordentlik doen en dan kan ons gesels. Deputy Speaker, the reason why the ANC cannot brag about their successes is because there's nothing to brag about. The Zondo Commission is riddled with stories of corruption under ANC watch. At Transnet, regiments received contracts without ever going through a procurement process.
Order.
Deputy Speaker, may I continue?
You may continue.
With China South Rail, Transnet even changed the requirement that China South Rail needed a BBBE certificate because they would have scored 0 in this regard. At SAA, the former chief procurement officer was instructed to sign letters for Swissport and Engine, amongst others, for contract renewal and set aside 30% of their contract value for BBBE entities, which was not lawful or in line with open tender procurement procedures. In fact, the corruption runs so deep at SAA that Bid Air, a 63% black-owned company, was informed that they must set aside 30% of their contract to, quote, an unspecified SAA-nominated black-owned small business, quote, close. In the city of Cape Town, city of Johannesburg, the EOH received heads up and confidential information whenever tenders went out, and specifically asked to donate funding to the ANC before and after the tender. In this regard, the Zondo Commission established what they said was, quote, regular solicitation of donations coupled with the award of tenders, quote, close. This is how they lead us. Van die Wallaf in die
Honourable
sloot.
Member, just if you could just take your seat. I have a hand up here. Honourable Said, what's your point of order?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, mine is not a point of order. Is the Honourable Deputy Chief Whip willing to take a question about the city of Johannesburg when Herman Mashaba was mayor, because she seems to be placed in Joburg now?
Don't tell us the context. Honourable Vartman, would you take a
Deputy
question?
Speaker, I'm still busy replying to some of the other stuff that they've indicated. So if I'll get there, I'm not sure if I'll be able to get to the extra question. Let me first try to get through the other stuff.
Thank you. You may
Deputy,
proceed, Honourable Sayed. Your answer is technically no. You may proceed, Honourable Maatman.
Deputy Speaker, the member Doug Moore indicated that President Ramaphosa is leading this country, and he's right. He is leading this country, maar hy lei ons van die wal af in die sloot. The ANC complains about unemployment in the Western Cape, but the Western Cape has the lowest unemployment figures in the country, despite the economy destroying lockdown regulations implemented by the ANC national government. We have 99% unqualified audits, the most in the country. This is the evidence. This is the data. They complain about budget cuts, but the national government is the government that decides how much money the Western Cape gets. So the less we get, the less we can spend. Deputy Speaker, the opposition asked for detail on the Municipal Energy Resilience Project, but when the detail is given, it is ignored. The ANC thinks that money grows on trees. They do not know that if you have a cost study for an MER project, it costs money. Technical expertise costs money. Supply studies cost money. Money doesn't grow on trees. Deputy Speaker, in the Western Cape, we believe in accountability. And because of this, we allocate majority of our budget to that which matters most. We value education, we value health, we value our economy. The state is funded by the taxpayer through various taxes, be it income tax, VAT, fuel levy, and the beneficiaries of this, Deputy Speaker, is the people of South Africa. And in the Western Cape, it's the people of the Western Cape, because it is the people's money. And the ANC national government does not do us a favor in giving the province money. It is the people's money. It's not the ANC's money. It's not even President Ramaphosa's money, who it seems member Doug Moore, Deputy Speaker, is now hashtag besties with, after he was also hashtag besties with the former President Zuma. It is not Minister Gordon Gwana's money. It is the people's money. And the DA will continue to fight for our rightful fair share for the people of the Western Cape. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognise finally Honourable Minister David Mania. Order, order, order.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to thank all participants from government, participants from the governing party, and of course participants from the opposition for their contribution to the second reading debate on the main budget for 2022-23. And I'd like to especially thank the Honourable Deirdre Bartman for responding to many of the points raised by opposition members in this debate. However, I would like to take this opportunity to respond to some of the points made, particularly by opposition members. I would like to begin with the Honourable Sean August. The Honourable Sean August says that this budget is a rehash. Well, this budget is not a rehash. Our budget to push forward is in fact a budget that allocates a massive 10.1 billion rand more over the medium term, 6.1 billion rand to education, 2.4 billion rand to healthcare, 136 million rand more to social development, and 2.6 billion rand more over the medium term to infrastructure in the Western Cape. On the whole question of underspending, yes, we need to be careful to monitor underspending, which is, of course, precisely why we will be providing bespoke quarterly reports on infrastructure spending performance to the relevant committees in the provincial parliament. But I think when it comes to education, we always need to be mindful of the fact that we are dealing with a big department with a big budget. And the underspending to which he refers amounts to less than 2% of the total budget for education in the Western Cape. The Honourable Ferdan Christians, on the whole question of the pandemic, with respect, has cost 20,000 lives and almost 275,000 jobs in our province. And it's precisely for that reason that we believe that we need to be prepared, and why we have provided the necessary funding particularly to the health department. And that is why we have in fact gone beyond and provided for a reserve of 200 million rand in the provincial reserves so that we can be prepared and ultimately win the fight against COVID-19 in the Western Cape. The Honourable Baku Foss is concerned about food relief. And contrary to what she suggests, we've in fact made a significant contribution to food relief, including 15.2 million rand in 2022-23, 15.9 million rand in 2023-24, and 16.6 million rand in 2024-25 to support our community nutrition distribution centres in the Western Cape. The Honourable Peter Murray, I must thank him for his compliments, especially to provincial treasury officials, who I like to refer as our behind-the-scenes heroes. And I'd also like to thank him for his unreserved support of our budget. I share his views that we need over time greater investment in safety in our province. But I hope that he recognises that this province, under the leadership of Premier Alan Winde, has done more than any other province, with a massive investment of 1.1 billion rand over the medium term to support more than 1,000 additional law enforcement officers to fight crime, especially violent crime in the Western Cape. So, the Honourable Brunkes, I appreciate, of course, your passion to support communities. And I appreciate your idea that there ought to be direct allocations to the 406 wards in the city of Cape Town. But with respect, Honourable Member, it seems that you have the wrong sphere of government. And I would suggest that you consider putting your ideas to the Municipal Council in the city.
Honourable Minister, if you can just take your seat. Honourable Sayed, what's your point of order?
Chair, I rise on a point of order. Can the MEC please speak to Member Brunkes through you, Chair? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Minister.
Thank you for that very significant and profound point of order from the Chief Whip of the Leader of the Opposition. I really am, Deputy Speaker, quaking in my boots. Deputy Speaker, to the Honourable Zega. He claims that the budget does not inspire. Well, I have to ask, this budget allocates an additional 10.1 billion rand over the medium term to education, to health, to social development, and to infrastructure. And if that doesn't inspire, I have to ask the Honourable Member, what will inspire him? We, of course, are in agreement that we need to allocate resources to allow entrepreneurs to start up businesses, which of course is precisely why we have allocated 78.5 million rand over the medium term to support businesses, particularly small businesses, both in the formal and in the informal sectors in the Western Cape. Then the Honourable Nomin Kondor suggests that on particularly the Municipal Energy Resilience Programme that we provide too little detail. My concern, to be frank, was that we provide too much detail. And at the risk of once again being accused of repeating myself, I think we should go back to my original speech and I will share some of the detail with the Honourable Member. The programme, as she should be aware, is now focusing on supporting foundational energy studies, including electricity master plans and cost of supply studies aimed at providing a technical and financial basis for energy generation, procurement, and of course trading in municipalities. The program is focused on supporting pioneering municipal energy projects by providing transaction advisory support to ensure that projects are financially, technically, and legally sound ahead of the procurement process. And of course, we are focusing on supporting wheeling to enable the private sector to buy and to sell and to trade electricity across municipalities in the Western Cape. I trust that that is sufficient detail on the municipal energy resilience program here in the Western Cape. Which then brings me to the comments made by the leader of the opposition, Cameron Dugnan. On the investment, yes, we'd welcome the 1.2 trillion rand in investment. But of course, what the honourable leader of the opposition does not acknowledge is that a significant proportion of that investment, of course, particularly in healthcare and health tech, is in fact landed right here in the Western Cape. On the whole question of land reform, what does not seem to be of concern to the honourable member is the fact that national government owns about 726,000 hectares of land in the Western Cape. Of those 726,000 hectares, 132,000 hectares comprise of vacant stands and vacant farms with a value of about 1.68 billion. So when it comes to land reform and the ownership of assets, it seems the problem is that national government is clinging to 132,000 odd hectares of vacant stands and vacant farms with a value of about 1.68 billion rand in the Western Cape, which should be of concern to the honourable leader of the opposition. On the whole question of expenditure, the honourable leader of the opposition remarkably claims that we are reducing expenditure on education and health. He often accuses me of repeating myself, but it's quite clear that I'm not repeating myself frequently enough. And so give me an opportunity to remind him that this budget allocates 10.1 billion rand more over the medium term, including an additional 6.1 billion rand over the medium term on education and an additional 2.4 billion rand on healthcare in the Western Cape. The honourable leader of the opposition also mentioned the whole question of inequality, and the honourable Baku Foss drew our attention to a report on the same subject by the World Bank. Of course, what is ignored by the opposition is the report's recommendations on how to accelerate the reduction of inequality. So first, the report recommends promoting equality of opportunity, especially by strengthening the provision of early childhood development services. Well, we have allocated 3.2 billion rand to early childhood development over the medium term in the Western Cape so that we protect the rights of children and develop children in the Western Cape. Second, the report recommends, and I quote, addressing the highly skewed distribution of productive assets, especially by removing barriers to entrepreneurship and self-employment. Well, we have allocated 64 million rand to accelerate the ease of doing business and 288 million rand to expand the number of work opportunities over the medium term so that we make it easier to start a business and so that we make it easier to expand a business and so that we can provide work experience so that young people can get their first jobs in the Western Cape. Thirdly, the report recommends enhancing the impact of social spending, especially by improving the targeting and efficiency of spending on education and health. Well, we have allocated 83.8 billion rand, including an additional 6.1 billion rand over the medium term to education, 84 billion rand over the medium term to health, including an additional allocation of 2.4 billion. so that we have more teachers, more teaching assistants, and more classrooms, and so that we can fight the pandemic, tackle the backlog in surgeries, and deal with mental health in the Western Cape. Fourth, the report recommends strengthening resilience to climate risk and economic shocks. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have allocated 36 million rand over the medium term to the Municipal Energy Resilience Program, which of course will support municipalities to generate and to procure and sell their own power, to build resilience and to withstand economic shocks like load shedding in the Western Cape. Of course, we can always do more, but it seems to me that according to the recommendations to accelerate the reduction in inequality, which are largely ignored by the opposition, we are making progress in the Western Cape. Finally, the leader of the opposition suggests that I am undermining the whole concept of the development state. Well, the truth of it is that national government and the zombie state-owned enterprises that have consumed 308 billion rand in bailouts is what is undermining and shattering the reputation of the development state in South Africa. Deputy Speaker, finally, I think that it is appropriate under the circumstances to end with the whole question of the war of aggression in the Ukraine, which of course is going to have negative effects on the economy in the Western Cape. When thousands of people are being killed, when millions of people are being displaced, when artillery shells are raining down on cities in the Ukraine, when opposition members are being jailed, when protesters are being arrested in their thousands, when people who oppose the war are being dismissed as traitors and scum in Russia, we have to ask ourselves the question, how is it that some opposition members spend their evening sipping champagne with diplomats from the Russian Federation and singing the praises of the Russian Federation? It is a scandal. And we are now a house divided, with this side of the house opposing the war of aggression, and some members of the opposition on that side of the house supporting the war of aggression. With this side of the house supporting open, diverse, and tolerant societies, and some members of the opposition on that side of the house supporting narrow nationalism, populism, and xenophobia. With this side of the house supporting free markets and some members of the opposition on that side of the house.
Thank you. Honourable Murray, what is your point of order?
I just want a correction. This side of the house don't all support Russia.
No.
The Freedom
No,
Front
I
don't.
don't need any explanation. That's not a point of order. Honourable Murray, please take your seat. Thank you. Honourable Minister, please proceed and conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for confirming his position. We have members of this side of the House supporting free markets, but some members of that side of the House supporting the development state, master plans, job reservation and localization. And we have this side of the House supporting compassion and tolerance, and most members of that side of the House supporting intolerance and often hate in South Africa. So, Deputy Speaker, let us push forward by standing up for freedom, by standing up for the open, diverse, and tolerant societies by standing up for free markets and by standing up for compassion and tolerance in South Africa, because if we don't do it, nobody else will in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. That concludes the debate on the consideration of the principle of the bill. Are there any objections to the approval of the principle of the bill? No objections? Agreed to. Mr. Stamela, you will read the bill.
Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Stamela. The House will deal with the separate votes on the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th of March 2022. I now will hand over, before we begin the next order, I will now hand over to the Speaker who is online. Thank you very much, honourable members. Mr. Stamela. Speaker, there you are.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Honourable members, good afternoon. The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of principle of the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you, Mr. Stamela. Honourable members, I've been advised by the Chief Whip that the Programming Authority had agreed that there will be no speakers list. However, an opportunity has been made for the declaration on the vote for a maximum of no more than 3 minutes per party. I will now afford the political parties the opportunity to make a declaration. If they so wish, I will start with the ANC. The ANC. All right. In the absence of the ANC, I see Honourable Dagmo.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable Syed will reflect the position of the ANC, or if Honourable Nkondlo is available, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition. Is Honourable Nkondlo available?
Honourable Speaker, the ANC welcomes the reallocation of the conditional grant for the Provincial Roads Maintenance Grant as another example of how the ANC national government continues to prioritize service delivery and the investment in the infrastructure. We welcome our national government's commitment to ensure our people's lives are changed for the better and how it leads in cooperative governance. In his State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa prioritized investment in infrastructure. In his budget address, Minister Enoch Godongwana pledged the necessary funds to this investment priority as announced by our President Ramaphosa. The ANC uses this opportunity again to appeal to this DA-led Western Cape provincial government to ensure that these additional allocations made to our province by the ANC-led national government reaches the people that needs these grants the most. We commend where we must, and so we commend the Provincial Department of Transport and Public Works for identifying in particular the road between Ashton and Swellendam, as well as the N2 stretch in the vicinity of Villiersdorp as the projects that this additional allocation is made. However, Deputy Speaker, we must demand that these roads and transport needs of the poor in Ashton, Swellendam and Villiersdorp also benefit from the good roads that it will hopefully bring about. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Nkondlo. Honourable members, I now recognize the EFF.
Thanks, Speaker. You may pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Kayako. Honourable members, I now recognize the Good Party.
Thank you, Speaker. No declarations.
Thank you, Honorable August. Honorable members, I now recognize the ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. No declaration.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, I now recognize the Akbar Mare, FF Plus.
Speaker, I want to salute for once the national government for having given this extra funds. It shows there is enough goodwill for us to be a successful country. If we look beyond which party it is and look which citizen is it. And I appreciate this money. I just hope that we will spend it where it's most urgently needed.
Thank you, Akbar Bayadanki, Akbar Mare. Honorable members, I now recognize Honorable Brenkes Al-Jama.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Al-Jamaya has no declaration. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, I now recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, according to the province's most recent road asset management plan, 73% of all surface roads have surpassed their design lifetime of 25 years. This is a result of cumulative budget cuts from national government, which puts further strain on the road infrastructure and daily commuting of the people of the Western Cape. Even though this does not pose an immediate threat of general safety to our road users, it does mean that the cost to replace our road infrastructure will increase exponentially over time if left unattended. Speaker, it should also be noted that despite those realities, the systematic approach of the Department of Public Works and Transport, coupled with its in-house capacity and capabilities, it has ensured that the majority of the Western Cape road network is still in good working order. However, the delayed maintenance of our roads in the short term will only significantly increase the cost in the future. Speaker, the national government's road maintenance grant is the primary source of funding for road maintenance in the province. While the provincial government does allocate additional funding to this, the dedicated grant funding supports governments in the costly exercise of maintaining our roads. So, Speaker, despite the fiscal constraints and decreased allocation from the national government, the provincial department has ensured that long-term projects continue unhindered by smoothing out expenditure over the financial years. Whilst our good governance means that our roads still remain safe, the only solution is if more money is allocated to the provincial road management grant. This is underscored by the recognition of the national government of our ability to spend our money on road maintenance and infrastructure by allocating the Western Cape an additional appropriation for the 2021-22 financial year of 43,396,000 rand. This is money that other provinces were unable to spend. These much needed additional allocation will be used for the resealing of the Ashton. Excuse me?
You must conclude, Honorable America. Your 3 minutes to an end.
Sure, thank you, Speaker. These much needed additional allocation will be used for the resealing of the Ashton and Dam Road, 15 million rand, N2 Verliesdorp Road, 27.7 million rand, and the Hooghaten in the Garden Route. We welcome the additional appropriation and urge the House to support the bill.
Thank you, Honorable America. Thank you very much, honorable members. That concludes the declaration on the consideration of the principle of the bill. Are there any objections on the approval of the principles of the bill?
None.
No objections. Agreed to. The secretary will read the bill. Mr. Stemmer.
Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stemmer. Will you please go ahead and read the third order?
Western Cape Additional Appropriation Bill 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you, Mr. Stemmer. Will you please read everything? Read from the consideration, please. For record purposes.
Consideration of vote and schedule. Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stemmer. Honorable members, as we consider the vote, like in the previous opportunity, the political parties have an opportunity here to use 3 minutes for declaration, if they so wish. I now put vote 10, Transport and Public Works, and that is the list of parties is the ANC, EFF in that order. Is the ANC taking the opportunity to speak on this vote?
Speaker, no, we are not going to speak on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Said. The EFF, on Honorable Tlago. Then okay. Let us skip the EFF and go to the Good Party.
Thank you, Speaker. No declarations.
Thank you, Honorable August. I now go to the Honorable Christians, ACDP.
No declaration, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Akbare Mare, FF Pass.
I don't want to disturb it, so I'll go also no declarations.
Baie dankie, Akbare Mare. Honorable members, I now go to Al Jamar, Honorable Brenkes.
Thank you, Speaker. No declaration. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Brenkes. Honorable members, I now go to the DA.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I would urge the House and the parties present to support the additional allocation. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Honorable
Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable America. I was setting my watch now. Thank you. Are there any objections, Honorable members, to vote 10?
None.
No.
No objections. Agreed to. Honorable members, the Secretary will read the fourth order of the day. Mr. Stemmer.
Finalization of the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Mr. Stemmer. Honorable members, I now recognize the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill be one of 2022, including the clauses and short title, be finalized.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, as there are no speakers list, are there any objections to the bill being finalized?
None.
No. No.
Thank you, Honorable members. No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill. Mr. Stemmer.
Western Cape Additional Adjustment Appropriation Bill 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you, Mr. Stemmer. The opportunity now, honorable members, has arrived for us to say this bill is concluded, and therefore it will be sent to the Premier for assent. And that concludes the business for the day. the secretary will end the session as it stands. So ndiyabulela kakhulu, bayadanki, I guess bayadank to all of you honorable members virtually and those who are in the chamber, and also to thank the Deputy Speaker. The House is now adjourned. Thank you, and that day.